Yo, what's up guys, when I'm Fire here back with a video, and today I'm bringing you guys another Madden 21 defensive variation. Going to be going over a play that I've talked about a couple of times this year out of a couple of different formations. Going to be going over the most popular formation, nickel 3-3-5 wide, how to run this particular play, and a couple of new ways that I have not shown. So we're going to be talking about the cover 4 drop show 2 in today's video. Of course, out of the 3-3-5 wide formation there at the bottom. I've been running a lot of cover 4 recently, and I want to show you guys a couple of the new setups that I found against different formations that gives you the best success for the play. So, for starters, of course, we're going to be in the 4-6 defensive playbook, best playbook with 3-3-5 wide. You're going to be running this audible system that we all know where you get safeties at linebacker, so you can go ahead and set those up. In today's video, we're going to end up using both the middle linebacker and the free safety, so depending on your best players, you can put them in those certain spots. We're also going to be adjusting our zone drops. So instead of using cover 4 as a match style of coverage in today's video, we're actually going to be using the zone drops to adjust it, but just keeping our base back end kind of the exact same. So say your flats up to 5 and your curl flats to around 25 or 20 yards. Depends on the personal preference. Of course, you can come out in any play. And on the offensive side of the ball, I think I'm going to go into a Trey Y flex. I might show a little bit of bunch just because I want to give you guys some tips against that. Of course, the most popular formation, but we're going to go into like a Trey Y flex, just set up a basic dagger play. So let's go ahead and get into that. Anyways, here we are out on the field. Let's get into our adjustments. Now, again, I got multiple setups for this play. And for the first one, we're going to start out while using the free safety. So really, you can do this against certain formations a little bit more than others. Where I don't like to go with this particular setup would be in a spread situation. But any kind of a trips, especially in this case where the trips is, of course, on the right side, you're going to use the left-hand safety. A bunch tight end is kind of interesting. Those compressed sets are a little bit interesting, but I would stay away from the setup against spread. And a potential bunch tight end, like a tight offset. Again, it depends on how your opponent's playing, of course. Take that into consideration, but let's just get into the adjustments. So the first thing I'm going to do is just simply audible, of course. I'm going to audible, and then I'm just going to immediately press my defensive back. So audible, press your defensive backs. Here's what it should look like. Of course, I'm going to user the free safety to the tight end side. That's where there's less of a threat. The next thing I'm going to do is spread my defensive line for these pass defense adjustments. I'm going to go ahead put the blitzing linebacker, which is of course on the right hand side. In this case, it's going to be this player right here, Watkins. You're going to put him in a hard flat zone, and then of course, since we want to keep it constant, we want 2 hard flat zones. I'm going to go ahead and throw this defensive lineman, which in our case is Melvin Ingram, in the hard flat as well. So the last thing that we have to do is shade over the top. Now, here's where it gets a little bit interesting with the back end adjustments. You'll see me do this for not only the first setup, but also potentially the second setup. And the reason that it's interesting is mainly because of this player right here, Derwin James. Now, a formation like dagger, there's not as big of a threat for a cover 3 beater. I would be pretty content in leaving this defense the same, or leaving it just like this. Of course, we're using a die. Leaving the defense like this would not be the worst thing in the world. I could easily do that, have decent success with the play. Against something like bunch, which I might show later, that's where you want to probably deep half him so that you do not get cover 3 beat, because basically any cover 3 beater will work on a cover 4 defense. It works even better than it does against stock cover 3, believe it or not, just because of how aggressive those outside quarter zones are. So depends formation to formation. Against like a wide trips, potential trips tight end, there's not too many cover 3 beaters out of that this year. But again, it just depends on the formation. So be careful. You should know what your opponent's running, what his go-to setups would be out of the particular formation. But let's just hop into it. Of course, I'm going to kind of lurk down on the drag with my user. You see the 3 receiver hook's going to do some nice things for us. Of course, the weakness in the defense is going to be the pass rush. And against the 6-man protection, you see not really that much pass rush there. In Ultimate Team, you should get better sheds. Of course, we all know that. But just see the base coverage is pretty well. Now, this particular setup is going to be a little bit better for coverage purposes. The reason for that is going to be that you have an extra guy roaming the middle of the field. So it's going to take a lot of pressure off your user. And if you did happen to see a potential deep route that you would have to cover yourself, that is where I can actually get back and potentially user it, because you see that the 3 receiver hook's going to defend the crosser well. He's even going to potentially go back and defend this in route, pretty well. I also want you guys to take a look at this streak. Looks like it's defended pretty well by our outside quarter and our inside quarter there. So again, something like tray wide flex, it won't be as much of an issue. Again, maybe if they go with a PA crossers, be careful, but those post routes take a lot of time to develop. So we'll just hop into this again. So again, press, spread your defensive line, put X on a hard flat, put this A linebacker in a hard flat, and then shade over the top, user a die. Now, I actually want to show you guys something. Let's say they go with the setup kind of like this. Maybe they streak A. In this case, they probably put RB on like a little out route, and then maybe they try to like go with a little cover 3 beer on this right side. Maybe they fade Y and they put B on a little out route. So we'll just show what it looks like. I'm not sure if this will beat our particular defense, but it could potentially. We'll just see. So of course I'm going to use a crosser. But you see, again, tray wide flex, it's defended pretty well. You notice how Chris Harris on that right side, or I guess not Chris Harris, but the cornerback on that right side is not going to bite on the out route. So against a formation like tray wide flex, I can get away with a setup like this and have pretty good success. I do want to show it against bunch though, because bunch is where you will have trouble. So I'm going to audible the bunch and I'm going to flip it onto the wide side so that I can potentially attack with a cover 3 beater in mind. So let's say I go with set up something kind of like flood. Now it's not going to work as good because I didn't set that play up. But I go with something kind of like this. So of course, just a basic flood setup. It's not perfect, but it looks pretty much the exact same. So if they were going with flood, of course, I'm going to audible, press, set everything up the same. You notice that the linebacker's now on the other side because, of course, we flipped a couple of things. But everything is remaining pretty much the same. Of course, I'm going to actually just still use the free safety just because we're going on that solo side. So let's just say they set up something like flood. You'll notice that probably B is going to be wide open there. Now, he didn't bite down as much as he usually does. Casey Hayward will usually bite down on that, but you do want to be careful. You saw how Cortland Sutton did have a step. Wasn't shown perfectly there, but you could kind of notice, and I'm sure if you've played this game this year, you know that cover 4 can easily be beat in that particular situation. So that would be maybe where you want a deep half A, but of course, it is perfectly content to run the setup as well until he at least shows that he can beat it potentially. So let's hop into setup number 2 of today's video. And what I'm going to go ahead and do for this particular setup is, again, be using that middle inside linebacker. So this is going to be a lot more safe of a setup. This is where I'm going to give you a couple of things underneath. Maybe I give you a little hitch here, a little hitch there, a little option route with my running back, but I'm not going to give up any big plays. I'm not going to give you anything deep, and that's where this setup comes into mind. So I'm going to audible. Of course, I'm going to press, and then I'm just going to use our 3 receiver hooks. So you're not going to have any help in the middle of the field. It's going to be more pressure on the inside, but less pressure on the back end, so I can bait. If you have a good user, this setup will be fine to use. Of course, we're going to set everything up pretty much the exact same way. Still going to be a 2-man rush. And with this setup, I can either run base cover 4, which, again, cover 4 still can be beat if I'm running it like this. That is something that I want you guys to know, that cover 4 can still be beat. Any cover 4 beater on the right side, if it were a bunch, could still be beat if I'm running it like this. So I can be a little bit more inept to run it like this, where I put LB on a deep half. Something like this could still work. I have extra help in the middle of the field with our inside quarter. So that's where maybe I'm a little bit more able to do an adjustment like this versus if you're using the free safety and I deep half that guy. There's a big hole in not only the middle of the field, but also deep in the middle of the field. So that's where you want to be a little bit careful. But let's set up dagger. Of course, it's going to take a tough user. I got to kind of lurk over on the crosser, but you see, you can pretty much defend it well. We get really good pressure there. And just showing the replay, you see, it's not too difficult, especially if you have a tall user. Of course, safeties can get off the ground a little bit, but see, I'm going to kind of lurk the drag. The crosser's not really open here. It's going to be difficult for him to kind of throw that pass. I'm right there, and then, of course, I retreat back to the in route. We do get a nice little shed, so make sure that you do get some good D linemen if you're running this, because, of course, it is a 2-man setup traditionally. So, yeah, that's pretty much what it is going to look like for you. You see coverage well. Of course, the hard flats, the curl flats deep, the streak routes deep. Everything is defended really, really well right there. So we'll set that up again. Audible, press, hard flat A, hard flat X, spread your D line, and shade over the top. Splits your user, and then of course I can, deep half whoever I want. Let's say I run it stock. Still would be the same result. You see I'm going to kind of lurk over, throw it, and I was a terrible user, but you see how you would really need a perfectly timed pass And even this is a good route combination to beat, like a coverage. But you see, you're going to need probably to go with like a hitch combo. That's the best way to beat any kind of a double flat concept, is to go with like a hitch. Or if I were to put my running back on a ghost route, that is the way. Those are the ways to beat this style of defense. So if he continues to do that, that's where maybe instead of a hard flat, I start manning people up, and if I can catch on to it. So if I notice, for example, my opponent going with the setup, pretty much he notices me going with the double flat every play. If he was doing something like this where he's putting A on a flat to create a little high-low read, maybe he starts putting A on a hitch, and maybe he also puts Y on a hitch, something like this. Now, I would assume if he's doing something like this, he's probably going to put B on a deeper post as well to create better spacing. But so let's actually hop into the adjustments on how I would attack that. I'll show how it works against the defense pretty well here. So we're just going to audible simply. I'll set everything up pretty basic so that you can see what it looks like. So again, I'm just going to put A on a hitch, Y on a hitch, block the running back, something like this. And you'll see how everything, of course, the hitch is open, both hitches open. So the in route, I have to come down. Y is going to be pretty much wide open the entire play. Very difficult to defend that. So if I notice my opponent going with something like that, let's just say instead of hard flatting, which a good opponent might be able to beat this defense because they notice that you're doing it, but for a play, I can catch them off guard by just manning up A on Y and manning up X on either RB or A. Again, if RB is on a little ghost route or an option route potentially where he's going to sit in the middle of the field, I can man him up. But I can just go with something kind of like this. And of course, I go with a hitch, I go with a Y. And this is the same case scenario if they're going with like a spacing concept out of the gun bunch formation. It would be the same exact thing for that. So you see, A defended well. I guess I accidentally made up him on RB. But you see, of course, just better coverage overall. And those are the little adjustments that you can make to create a better defense. Let's hop into just one more small setup. And this would be a setup if I did want to go with a 3-man rush. Now, 3-man rush, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to again put A on a hard flat. I'm just going to move this middle linebacker over and I'm going to put him on the hard flat, shade over the top, use the free safety. So now this is a very aggressive style of defense. You're both double flatting, you're leaving a hole open in the middle of the field, and of course you don't have any help in the middle there. So this is a 3-man rush, very aggressive defense. Of course, maybe I QB spy to take away drag so I don't have to run all the way down. That could be something I do, but then again, that kind of ruins the point of the 3-man rush. I want better pressure. So something like this, you see it's going to be very difficult for me to just use her. Of course, a play where there's nothing deep, I can make do of that. And you see right there, we end up getting the sack, but it's a little bit more aggressive. You notice how you're going to have to make some better adjustments with this particular play. So that's pretty much going to do it for the video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you go ahead, subscribe to the channel down below. We're on the road to 17,000 subscribers, so if you could subscribe to the channel, it would be much appreciated. Also, drop a like on this video if you want more content like this. Should be more gameplays dropping soon. I know you guys always like to see those. Follow me on Twitter, link will be down below in the description, and peace. I'm out of here.